Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. We have our friend Tim from Egg Chasers. Tim, a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Excited with every day that goes by. We're getting close to the World Cup, and now we've got Rugby Championship, proper rugby again.
Yes, real games of international rugby. We've been talking about it for ages. Here is the iteration, if you like. It's a rugby championship. It's a shortened rugby championship, of course, because it's the World Cup. But my first little statement/question is this actually a glorified World Cup warm-up, really?
Yes, I think really, yeah. No, who cares who wins this Rugby Championship tournament this time? They're not going to have the big fireworks and celebrations like a normal year because everyone knows, a few weeks beyond this tournament, these games count for very, very little. And I think with the selection we've already seen from South Africa, you get an indication that that's very much where the mindset is. This is about getting the squad ready for a World Cup.
Yeah, and we've seen it in past World Cups, haven't we? That really it's about getting ready, and the winner of the Rugby Championship doesn't normally dictate who's going to be the best in the World Cup, although last year was the exception. So really, first of all, let's just go through the fixtures, starting with South Africa, Australia in South Africa. Eddie Jones was asking for the strongest South African team, and it's the only team we've had at the point of recording. And it's not the strongest South African team at all. They've gone for a really straight split, really, haven't they? Sent some boys off. Well, they'll send some boys off to New Zealand to get ready. And then they've kind of got a mixed match of players in the team. So any names stand out to you, particularly for South Africa?
I just, that back line has just got gas, so much gas. But I think the one name that I'm really pleased to see there, and I know he's never been totally out of the South Africa picture, but we've been lucky enough to watch in English rugby, Andre Esterhuizen.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I mean, Damian Diolande is outstanding, but Esterhuizen, if he were any other nationality, he would be probably, in most cases, head and shoulders the obvious choice at 12. He is that good. And that speaks to the depth that South Africa have got. But he could be a real contender for that 12 shirt, and he's a special player. So it's really good to see him in. And I guess the other one is the 10 position is the one area that I'm kind of watching in South Africa and going, who's going to have that 10 jersey? Are they going to go back to Pollard? Is it going to be Willemse? And now we've got Libbok we can have a look at.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Libbok, what's great is he's a great talent, and they need a good backup to Pollard, whose injury hopefully is minor. So this could be a blessing in disguise. Libbok is very exciting, very, very exciting. And he needs time, a bit like Esterhuizen. These guys need minutes. They're getting it straight away. Esterhuizen's already had 11 caps and hasn't nailed down anything. Diolande's had it for ages, but I wouldn't say Diolande's untouchable now. Many people in the comments have said Am hasn't had the best season either, so he might need some minutes as well. So in the centres, definitely getting these guys game time is absolutely vital. What about in the pack? We've got Big Dwayne leading the way as the captain. Anyone else there catch the eye?
Skipper as well. Well, I suppose you've got to mention Jean Klein being back in South Africa. They've managed to poach an Irishman for their team.
Well, that's quite cool. South African, haven't they?
I know. Poached a South African who was poached by the Irish to become an Irishman. I'm not totally sure that Jean Klein was how the World Rugby were intending the whole flipping between national teams to work, but it's quite a cool story, and there is a spot open. I mean, the three frontline locks for South Africa are pretty nailed on, but it's a bun fight for some of those final spots in the squad. You got Jean-Luc Dupree as well, who could operate as a second row, back row, but this is an opportunity for guys like that to stake a claim. And there's not many spots in the South Africa squad where you think are open, but some of the guys like that are the ones to watch this weekend, because they're going to be going all out to try and make the 33-man squad.
Well, maybe they thought they were short of some size, Tim, in that second row. Maybe they're a bit small. So they needed another massive guy in there. My
Bunch
God.
Of freaks, aren't they?
Oh.
I mean, yeah.
Look on the bench. Check out the bench. It's the 6-2 split. And off the bench, you're getting Thomas du Toit and Vincent Koch, the props. Then RG Snyman is back and Evan Roos. It's disgusting, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's filthy.
Filthy, yes.
Their depth and talent is pure filth. And it's interesting with the units, the way South Africa operate. You mentioned Thomas du Toit. He didn't slot into the starting berth when Oxenche dropped out. Yep. Stephen Kitsoff comes straight in above him. So they're clearly working in these units of three, and that'll be interesting to see how that operates as well, the bomb squad.
They're seeing how these guys operate as a unit coming off the bench. Can they make the impact? And the guy that makes it tick is Damian Willemse. Like the guy who plays 10, 15 and centre. This is how you do a 6-2 split. It may be the reason Willemse doesn't actually get in the starting 15 because he's so good at number 23, which is a bit of a weird statement.
But that is such a valuable position in the squad. And like you say, it's a backhanded compliment, isn't it? Because everyone wants one of the starting. But it is a 23-man game now. And guys like Willemse are worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely. And maybe they'll have Khaleesi back as well. Probably won't see him until a lot later, though. So that'll be interesting.
They've got options, crazy levels of options. And Loftus Versfeld's a difficult place for an opposing team to come and play.
Oh, a beast
so
in the first
welcome
game.
Eddie Jones.
Yeah. Go on to Australia then. Eddie Jones with Australia. Just overall, what do you expect from them under Eddie Jones? Is it going to be different?
The one thing I will say, so in England, we got a little bit disillusioned with Eddie towards the end. It felt like he was just playing the same game over and over again. But what you cannot knock about Eddie Jones is his ability to come into, I mean, he's a fantastic coach, but to come into an environment and make an impact straight away. He did that with England. He's done that with Japan. He's done that his whole career. I joked after a couple of years of Eddie Jones that the best thing England could do was sack him and then hire him again, because you seem to get Eddie Jones a bit like Jose Mourinho in football. That first 2 years, he has such a big impact, and he's been on the phone, and he's got some of those guys back from France.
Yeah,
and I'm scared of Australia. I'm going to confess, if and when England and Australia could potentially meet in a quarter-final, that scares me. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, his biggest coup so far is getting those 5 guys approved to come in, because they are absolute beasts and they're going to be huge players for them. But I still see this going one of two ways, Tim. Everyone's bigging up Eddie Jones's impact, but from what he said, he's taking Australia back to basics a bit, which is what England did. He did with England.
Yep.
But to me, the players that England had at the time suited that maybe a bit more. You have Dylan Hartley, James Haskell, Rob Shaw, really honest players. But Australia, their USP has been throwing the ball around at the right time, of course. But I just don't know. I just don't know if they will be okay, but not quite special enough.
I know what you mean. They do have some special talents. There's no getting around it. At international level, you have to be able to do both of those things, and you only have to look back to 2019 in South Africa. They battered England in that final for an hour, and then let rip with some incredible attacking play in the last 20. And you've got to have both. And I think Eddie Jones recognises that. And so I don't know that he's going to change the way Australia play completely, but he's going to make sure they do the nuts and bolts first, and then they play. And they've got some game breakers when they do go. Marika Corambetti is one of the best and most powerful wingers in world rugby, and they've all got this natural fluid ability. I really like Tom Wright as a fullback, just real balance and awareness and skills. So when they do get the opportunity, I think they'll still go. But Australia have always had that feeling that you could get under their skin a little bit up front, and I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. They look much more robust than than they have done in the past with the personnel, as you mentioned, that they've got back in.
Yeah, that starting 15 is absolutely fantastic. I think below the surface of that, I think they might be a bit light if they start copping a few injuries. Eddie Jones has taken a big risk already in this rugby championship, maybe not for the World Cup, but he's said 2 fly halves, and the first fly half is Quade Cooper, who's obviously a bit older, can pick up a few injuries, and then he's gone all in on Carter Gordon, who is probably the next big thing, or definitely the next big mullet. But I mean, he's good, but he hasn't played, so he's taking a risk already, and he does do that sometimes.
He likes to, and he's got a good track record of it, to be fair, but he likes to pin his colours to the mast and say straight away, "You're my guy." And yeah, as you say, he's done that. He's made some big calls. Like you say, I think the area where Australia are most of an unknown quantity, like you say, the backup players, but the back row, obviously Hooper, stalwart, back row, second row, if Arnold and Skelton are out. Are these guys top end talent? We're going to find out in the World Cup.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, Australia are a massive unknown. They could go through the whole rugby championship and not quite win a game, which in some ways is okay, but momentum is a weird one. In this rugby championship, it's so weird. You want to try things, and if you don't win, okay, but then you need something to hang your hat on. You need something just for the human element to get the momentum going. So it's such a tricky balance for these coaches to strike, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Now, forgive me for mentioning England, but it's just relevant with Eddie Jones, and we saw that was his last job. But the way that the England players spoke about Eddie Jones in his early days, when they had that world record equal in number of test wins, won the Grand Slam, got to a World Cup final, he pumped up the players' tires and created a really positive environment. And the way that the players talked about him was fantastic. If he can get that energy and that sense of confidence and a bit of mojo, then I think he could be cooking. But it's all ifs at the moment. And yeah, like you say, we're all of a sudden going to get a baptism of fire at Loftus and see what this Eddie Jones Australia team is all about.
Yeah, but the door is open because South Africa have mixed up their selection. So it's not like it's, the 2019 World Cup team, which they could have played just straight out of the blocks. So, it's fascinating to see how that one goes.
I cannot wait.
Cannot
wait.
Absolutely. I'll start New Zealand with another bold statement here, and you can react to this. I think New Zealand they're actually the dark horses now. I was thinking maybe it's Australia, but they've been so underplayed and they've dominated Super Rugby once again. They can field a stack of experienced players who are in form. I mean, Cody Taylor's back in form. Whitelock and Retallick seem as good as ever. Sam Kane's probably better than he's ever been. Mwanga's just, going through what he normally does. Mackenzie's on fire. If they can get some of their youngsters in the mix with a bit more firepower, they're absolutely contenders, which no one's really talking about, I don't think. What do you reckon?
I agree. I think, yeah, it's the chemistry, it's the alchemy, and it's the combinations that I don't know what Ian Foster's going to pick. I don't know, in various positions. There's a number of positions where you don't know who he's going to pick. And that's why these games, from a New Zealand point of view, that's why these rugby championship games are so important, because there's no messing about. September the 8th, and they're playing in France.
Yeah. That's it. Of course, it's the opening game. Of course.
Yeah. So they have to nail down these combinations, and there's no end of talent, like you say. But who? D-Mac's playing so well, but how or if, where does he fit in? And then, but at whose expense and in what position? And, you can't play Bowden Barrett and Richie Mwanga and Damien McKenzie and Will Jordan. And
you can't fit them all in.
You can't fit all these pieces. No. You cannot fit them all in. And I don't know what the best combinations are. There's very few areas on the pitch where you go, there you go, they're my guys. You mentioned the second row. There's one area. Back row's pretty pretty. In fact, the pack overall is pretty balanced. And what I would say, final point on this is their pack looks pretty gnarly to me.
Which is an area they've been criticised for, isn't it?
Yes. But Ethan de Groot, the tight head prop options they've got, the hookers, as you mentioned, really experienced locks. I like their front five, which they have had some stick for before. And if they can pull it together, I think they can do some damage. I was at Twickenham for the game with that 25-all draw against England, and that was one of the things that I really took away. Is like, wow, some of these guys that are newer at international level, newer than some of the old guys, Ethan de Groot and Fletcher Newell, and it's like these guys can play. They're tough players.
Well, yeah, I mean, watch out for Tamatai Williams as well, the 22-year-old Crusader prop, 144 kilos, an absolute beast. He could be the next big thing. Maybe, I mean, Scott Barrett's come along and kind of basically filled the role at 6 that they needed, but maybe Samapeni Finau could be actually a specialist back row that does that, which frees up Barrett to then kind of be the sub that maybe replaces. He's their third best second row, and he could then cover back row, which may help. Aaron Smith is still very good, but he's not quite got the firepower he used to. So if they get Cam Roygaard going, finally, maybe that is an heir apparent. You know, it could all fall into place. And moving on to the game, New Zealand are travelling to Argentina. There's a couple of guys carrying some knocks who aren't going. Will Jordan, one of them. They may decide to rest some of the final guys, maybe Sam Whitelock. Mm-hmm. So they could well do a bit of a South Africa and really mix it up. Do you think they will, or do you think they should go for their best team out of the blocks?
I think they will do exactly what you've described. They'll focus on having a good, putting a real strong team out at home against South Africa, and they'll get some of these the guys that are battling for those final spots in the squad will get a go against Argentina. That's my expectation. Much as South Africa have already done, they've focused on that New Zealand game, and it does look like a real acid test for those two teams. And bearing in mind that they could well play in quarter-final.
Yep.
It looks like there's extra significance on that one.
Well, I'll tell you an area that's, I mean, always strong in New Zealand, but very, very fickle, if you like. It changes a lot. The back three, the wingers, we don't know what their best combination is. I mean, Narawa's been tearing it up. Fainganuku's been tearing it up. Sean Stevenson has been tearing it up. But, I mean, goodness me, who's he got in front of him at 15? Mackenzie, Bowden Barrett. So, you know, if they get the mix right, like you said, it could be great, but it is a bit unknown. And the centres as well, I wouldn't say, you know, is absolutely nailed down, even though you'd say Rico Ioane is their starter. I get plenty of comments saying they're not sure he's a team player. That, you know, there's plenty of doubts there as well. So I think in the backs, there are plenty of questions to be answered. I wonder if Sean Stevenson will get a role this weekend or not.
Yeah, I suspect he probably will, because the one person we haven't named that I just think he's for the same reason we're talking about Willemse for South Africa. Maybe Geordie Barrett ends up being in the 23 shirt, but I love that guy. Whether it's and I think he probably will get accommodated on the wing, because the teams they're going to be playing against, I mean, and particularly that opening game against France, and when you get to a quarter-final against Ireland or South Africa, most likely, Scotland, you're going to get a lot of aerial bombardment, and so I still think Geordie Barrett's in the picture. So I mean,
sorry, who do you think is going to go on the wing?
Yeah, I think guys like Stevenson will get a run out. Sorry, say again.
Who did you say was going to get a go on the wing?
Oh no, but like, where or do you accommodate Geordie Barrett in a starting 15? And I think he's the kind of guy, when it comes to a World Cup, I definitely want him in the 23 and maybe in the 15. And where do you slot him in?
Well, he's been playing.
He
12,
might end up on the wing
he?
again. He's been playing 12. Yeah, I exactly as you say. But it just depends on the type of game they want to play. I think because of the amount of kicking that goes on, you could end up with with guys like that back in the back three? I don't know. I just don't know. There's so many unknowns with Ian Foster's team. So, yeah, first stop Argentina, and let's have a look.
Okay, well, look, let's last but not least, let's finish on Argentina. Obviously, they are the least fancied side in the Rugby Championship, but then last year, big wins. They beat New Zealand in New Zealand. They beat England in England. But then after the New Zealand game, they got absolutely pumped by New Zealand, and they were pretty woeful. So it's like, if they get it right, if they don't make mistakes, essentially, and they use their passion, they can beat anyone. But can they string it together?
Such a cliche, isn't it? That you don't know what Argentina team you're going to get. The passion, but sometimes it spills over. We saw that Marcus Kremer red card against Wales, was it? I can't remember. Wales or Scotland, maybe.
5
and
weeks.
They got a beating off after. Yeah, exactly. So they're dangerous. And again, first up in the World Cup, they've got England, so that the opening round of pool matches could be very, very important. And so Argentina need to put it together. They tend to at World Cups, don't they? Over the years, there tends to be kind of chaos going on between World Cups, and then they kind of generally pull it together and give a good account of themselves at World Cups. We'll see on this occasion, but at home they need to.
Yeah, I mean, they can string together. I mean, they can put out a very experienced side that we could literally reel off the names. They have chucked in a couple of interesting players there from the 7 setup who have been really good. Isgro and Gonzalez, I mean, they've got some speed and power. So, they've got firepower out in the backs if they want to use it. But, they generally last year, they were playing some very simple pod shapes. Fairly predictable. I remember, doing quite a lot of match reports saying, look, what's coming. So if they get it right, it's good. But if they get it wrong, you can not easily dispel it, but what to look out for. So I wonder if they will chuck some of these 7s guys in there just to mix it up a touch. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder. And with Santi Carreras is kind of how much they put the focus on him in that 15, I think, will be a massive indicator. If they go for the forward route and the driving mauls and the pod shapes, as you say, but if you just hand the reins of that team to Santi Carreras, go, right, this is your team, then it could be even more unpredictable. But that, I think, is probably Argentina's best chance at going really deep in the competition, causing an upset when it comes to quarterfinal, semi-final kind of time, because I just think he's just such a special talent. Yeah, and they've got a few of them in their pack, but he's the ringleader and the ringmaster. So I'm hoping that they just let him go.
Absolutely. Okay, and then there is a final fixture, which is basically kind of a bit more of a warm-up fixture. New Zealand get to play Australia again, Argentina, South Africa again. So they will see each other a little bit, 4 rounds, if you like, 3 of them in the Rugby Championship. So they should be very well prepped ahead of the game, potentially. I mean, just the final question is, do you see there an advantage for the Southern Hemisphere seeds teams who start a little bit earlier with their warm-ups, or would you like the longer preparation in camp like the Northern Hemisphere teams?
I think historically it's tended to favour the Northern Hemisphere teams when the World Cup's in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere teams when it's in the Southern Hemisphere. However, I like the feeling of this from their point of view. They've just finished their Super Rugby Championship. They're into a shortened Rugby Championship. They get to come and acclimatise with France and Northern Europe, and then they're straight into it. I think they're going to be in a good place. Whereas England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, they're all going to have been in a camp for a long time. But in terms of actual game times, it's all quite condensed close to the World Cup. So I think the Southern Hemisphere teams are in a good spot. I like it.
Excellent. Okay. All right, we'll leave it there then, Tim. Thank you so much. Pop all the comments below what you think is going to happen in the Rugby Championship, which players are going to be played, who's going to come through, how they should do selection. Love to know all your comments. We will do another video themed around the Rugby Championship, picking a combined 15 on Tim's channel, Egg Chasers. So do go over there and check that out. But until then, we will see you later. Thank you very much, Tim.
Top man, Rich.
Excellent. See you later, guys.